Hey there. Welcome to Connect This. This is going to be a wonderful show today and a show that is dedicated to broadband parenting. So you can say, I learned it by watching you, Dad. I learned it by watching you.
Or mom.
Uh,
Well, the frying pan, this is your brain on drugs ad series that I took that from. The mom never did drugs. Women are pure and would never engage in such naughty behavior, I believe.
Got it.
so, Chris, should we put the huge disclaimer out for this episode?
That I'm wacky.
Well, that too, but I will speak for myself that I am on LTE/LTE/Wi-Fi out in Dallas, Texas right now. So who knows how long this will last? And I'm guessing Monica may be on the road as well. So with hotel Wi-Fi.
Hotel Wi-Fi, yes.
And
right.
I can't speak for Monica. Monica has wonderful taste. Travis, I find it entertaining that you look like you are in much nicer surroundings when you're on the road than when you're in your own home.
You like my SCO mirror here in my camper? Pretty fancy, isn't it? So
Yes.
yeah. Well, somebody else designed all this. The house, I guess that was me. So yes, you are correct.
So let's do some quick introductions, and we are still hoping that our fourth guest will be joining us. He may be stuck in traffic, as Monica was until very recently. And Monica's back. Monica was on one of our early shows. We were getting our footing. Monica Webb, who is the Senior Director of Market Development and Strategic Partnerships for Ting, which is an ISP that I like still, but getting nervous about how big you are. You do wonderful things. Hey, Robert, thanks for joining us. I was just
so sorry.
No worries.
West Coast time or something. I don't know what my brain was thinking. So
yeah, no worries. I was just introducing Monica. So I'll introduce you in a second. But Monica, do you want to let people know what Ting is?
Sure. Ting is actually a subsidiary of Two Cows, and if you do know what Two Cows stands for, I will give you a special call out because it gives you some pretty significant nerd cred. But it was one of the original internet companies back in 1993. It was founded on the premise of increasing affordability and accessibility of internet to the masses. And that's still, a very foundational value of Two Cows and its businesses today. We do other businesses. We're also the second largest domain registrar in the world, and we also have a platform for mobile and soon to be internet services. And Ting Internet started in early 2015. And famously, some of you may have heard of our partnership with the city of Westminster, Maryland, where they built and own the network, and we provide services over top. And we also, the first market we were in was Charlottesville, Virginia. So we do different models. We will partner with cities and other jurisdictions and also private infrastructure builders to just provide service over top, but we also build, own, and operate and provide service over our own networks that we build. And currently, we are in Maryland, going east to west, Maryland, Virginia, North Carolina, Colorado, Idaho, and California. We have 14 markets in those cities, and excited to continue expanding in those footprints, and very interested in doing it with different models that work well for cities, and that also work for Ting.
And until recently, you were doing this thing too. So for people who are still confused, we still use the name Ting, but it's not you anymore. Is that right?
Yeah. So last year we actually, so I'll give it a little bit of background. In 2012, we launched Ting Mobile in the United States. And it was really founded on, we're going to do things differently. We're going to allow people to just pay for the data that they use on their phones. And when they call us for support, a human being is going to answer the phone, and that person is going to be empowered and educated enough to solve your problems. It's not going to be, you're not going to be put on hold, you're not going to be escalated to technical support, et cetera. So those two things combined really led us to become I'd say a cult favorite with a small number of subscribers in the US.
Super influential people like me.
Yes, exactly. You and some of the other great internet thinkers out there. And we actually it did end up being, more challenging as the other providers woke up and realized that, people didn't want to pay that much for data. And so more value options were out there. It became more challenging for us to, to get good wholesale rates. And so we actually sold our customers to Dish, but we continue to provide the platform for those customers of Dish, Dish and its various cell brands. And that platform will also be available for other cellular providers to utilize to provision and bill their customers. And we're also going to do the same thing for ISPs in the internet space. That is something that Ting will be the first customer of that platform. It's called Wavelo. We announced it last week, and that's also another exciting development with the company. And I would say everything really hinges on the fact that one of our core competencies is software development. And what that means for us and for our customers is we can really develop a fantastic, user-friendly, and efficient platform that pleases users and also, enables us to provide services at better value to our customers because it costs us less. So it's a win-win.
Monica, I feel like you're too polished now. Like, I feel like you're just you've been doing this
It's
long
true.
enough now.
Chris,
I think people
yes.
might not understand what a geek you are.
Yes, well, Chris did meet me when I was living in Western Mass in a rural town, and I had no broadband, and I was just learning about the how to advocate effectively and get networks built. And I think that was back in like 2007 era, 2007, 2008. So I think I've come a long way. Chris is still frustratingly smart as he ever was.
I thought you were going to say like I'm polished and Chris is still volcanic.
Chris's hair lengths have been the biggest changes about him.
Yeah, no one looked for Bass pictures of me. So let's I want to come back to something Ting does to see if Travis and Robert are interested in doing similar things, but I want to go on to Robert quick. Robert Boyle, CEO at Planet Networks, welcome to the show. We just got a tweet, one of our past guests, Vico. He says he loves Robert. So apparently folks know who you were. I thought that you were, an obscurity there in New Jersey. So tell us what you do.
Vico's a great guy. So we've been in the internet space for a really long time. So we started out in 1994 as a dial-up ISP. So we've been doing this for a really long time. We were the first in our area with a local phone number. We started doing it back when it was AOL was what people knew of the internet, or that was most people's experience, and people would get the AOL CD, put it in their computer, and then get a $500 phone bill. So our initial marketing was a local number for AOL. That's how we sold our service. And then over time, we'd say, hey, you know what, you have training wheels. Let's give you the real internet. And so we were the first in the area with DSL. We started deploying that in 97 and 99. We started doing some wireless, and then 2000 we started deploying fiber. However, because of the Telecommunications Act and a lot of different things that happened with court cases and getting access to poles, and how the ILECs kind of fought to make it more difficult and make it restrictive for access, we wound up kind of getting out of that business and focusing on our cloud business. So we grew that and became one of the largest.
Extremely common, right? I mean, that's what a lot of folks did at that time.
Yeah. So because we said we can't control the outside world, so let's at least control our little space in our data centers. And we grew our medical hosting business. We became one of the largest in the world, and sold that to Dell Pro Systems, and that became Dell Physician Services. And then had a kind of a little phase there where I was just doing consulting stuff and trying to figure out kind of what's next. And in 2016, 2017, started up going through the process to become certified as a CLEC in New Jersey. Took about a year to do that. And then we've been seeking right-of-way grants, and we're in New Jersey is unusual in that you have to get permission from every single municipality, and there are 565 municipalities in New Jersey. So it's very densely populated, very small state, but very densely populated, most densely populated state in the country. Yet we have entire streets where they can't get cell service, they have no DSL, and they have no cable. So in the areas that are well served, they're very well served. In the other areas, in the more rural parts of the state, it's very rural. And so we've been deploying fiber since 2017, and we're building at, in the beginning we started building very slowly, and we leased some fiber from some other competitive access providers to get to certain neighborhoods, and we would work with new developments to put fiber in the ground before they built. And lately, last week we hung, I think, 16 miles of fiber last week. So we're really accelerating a lot now, and we have many towns that are 100% coverage. We have we're working right now in about 20 different municipalities building out network, and we probably have right now we have a waiting list of over 50,000 people who want our service who we can't serve yet. So it's and we offer very reasonable rates. Gigabit, we're starting to deploy XGS-PON for 10 gig service, and we're very competitive, and we don't charge any installs. There's no contracts, so our customers love us. We have like solid 5-star ratings and everything, and people very rarely ever leave our service. And we serve municipalities, nonprofits, businesses, residential, pretty much anyone who wants to be a customer will provide a service for them. So.
Excellent. And then before we lose him again, we temporarily perhaps have Travis Carter, the longtime co-host and the champion of learning by doing at USI Fiber.
Oh, no, sorry about that. The phone hasn't rang all afternoon. Within 4 minutes of starting, it's rang 4 times. So I thought
maybe you're having a connectivity issue as you're sampling the different wireless options.
Yeah. So Robert, I got 2 LTE services and Wi-Fi right now, so we're hoping to survive an hour. It's amazing how spoiled you get when you have proper fiber connectivity. So,
well, last night I should have brought my scarf. I was at the U.S. men's national team and game here in St. Paul, Minnesota, where we set the record for the coldest soccer game ever, and an even more impressive record, the stupidest soccer game ever. As there's reports that 2 of the Honduran players had to be treated with for hypothermia. It was dang cold. It was really dang cold, and also Verizon didn't work.
Yeah, why? Why would you do that?
Well, if people are doing something really historically stupid, you want to be there to say you were there, as people talk about that for years and years and years afterwards. So,
well, I want to ask Monica. She said if we knew what 2 cows stand for, we were like nerds. If we've actually used WinSock as our only means for IP, are we super nerds then, or what?
So you're a whole other caliber of a whole other caliber of nerd cred there. Like
all right, so I think we have Jim, Robert, and myself who are WinSock veterans.
Yeah,
that's Chris. Did you ever use WinSock?
No, I did not.
Oh yeah, I did. Before
spoiler for those who are listening, WinSock is the W in 2 cows.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's not Wind. Let's be clear, it's not WindSock, it's WinSock.
Yeah, Windows TCP sockets.
Trumpet WinSock. Remember that beauty? That was a nice piece of software.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to finish the topic, which was that Verizon didn't work last night in the stadium, even though there's amazing Wi-Fi in Allianz Field, and a lot of people were offloading on that. Even that, just a reminder that that wireless thing is still it's always the future because it's never the present, I guess, maybe.
So interestingly, we do the wireless at Scott Stadium for UVA, which is a football stadium, and JPJ, which is their basketball arena, and there's a multi-gig fiber pipe into both of those facilities, and then it is mesh Wi-Fi access points in both of them, like hundreds of them.
Right, that's probably like a capacity of like 60,000, at least 40, 50,000, I'm guessing.
Yeah,
it was 19,000 last night.
Beautiful.
19,000 people. Like, it's not that many people.
Well, it's the difference between relying on LTE versus an integrated Wi-Fi mesh.
Mm-hmm.
Probably.
Yes, no, I'm sure that's the case. And sometimes they bring in temporary the cows, I think they call them, but
only one, like multiple cows, not 2.
Right. Certainly not 2. All right, so there's a lot of things that we want to get at today. I did want to break the news to you guys. I'm worried about your businesses. HughesNet is raising prices, and they have better bandwidth caps now. So I don't know if you factored that in. If you've broke it to the banks, that you might lose some customers. But HughesNet's satellite service is improving apparently.
Well, see, I thought you were going to talk about Starlink's business service at $500 a month.
Yeah, I was thinking about that too. I figured you'd bring it up.
That's what I'm very worried about.
$2,500 setup too. So
yeah, not bad.
I was a HughesNet customer for 14 years.
I'm sorry.
Are those fond memories, Monica?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I'll never forget having to, I would constantly go over the bandwidth limit, and I was at the top package. And so then you had to call them and get a token. I mean, it was literally like, what am I playing slots here in Las Vegas? What is with, I have to get a token that would last me another 24 hours. I just can't even. Well, the best line I ever got from them was when I went to the top package and they said, "You're going to love this because you will be able to stream one movie a month."
Wow.
Monica, as someone who's like now very integrated in the business, also the stupidity of like, let's figure out how we can burden our customer service representatives with more unnecessary calls. Like, what is that? So let's talk about other things. I want to start with a quick and easy topic because Travis had brought it up, and then we're going to get into the more deep ones. Railroad crossings. Travis, why were they top of mind for you? And let's hear if Monica or Robert has any fun stories about the railroad crossings.
Yeah, it was kind of an interesting change that we ran into at the end of last build season. I assume you guys are doing a fair amount of underground, and we had a new requirement that came in from the local rail groups where they no longer wanted us to run multiple conduits under the tracks. They want us to run a single 6-inch, and then we would if we needed a second path, we would run another 6-inch, but they wanted at least 3 to 4 foot separation between them. It was an interesting change that we hadn't run into before. So now we're kind of scrambling to figure out, all right, so at rail crossings, we'll bring in a high bundle of conduit from the east, high bundle from the west, single 6-inch under, and then do a high fiber count under the rail. So it was just an interesting tweak, I guess, to the never-ending amount of tweaks that happen in underground construction in our area.
So we don't do any. I'm trying to think if we do any. I don't think we have any underground railroad crossings today. All of our railroad crossings are aerial. It's still, there's this huge stack of paper and it takes 6 months, and everything is just, for literally 20 or 50 feet or whatever it is to get over the railroad tracks. But it's sometimes that's more expensive than permitting the entire rest of the road to get that one crossing. But we found the railroads that we work with are pretty reasonable. And as long as you kind of respect their process, we don't find it to be terribly difficult. Especially the first one was really difficult, and then now it's pretty routine.
Yeah, same for us. We tend to submit all the rail crossings. Our very first permits we submit for the year, actually approved by mid-construction season.
Monica, that must be fun when you're doing like one market in one state and then another market in another state, and you just get to I see why you're expanding in Colorado now.
Crossings. But here's the thing that I would say. Fortunately for me, we have an extremely talented project management team that handles the details of that. And so I am not immersed in the details unless, they believe there's something I can help with the cities. But I think the biggest issue with railroad crossings isn't so much the details of how you do it. It's that the approval process from a timing perspective can be an unknown. And, if you've ever done anything, like done a renovation, built a house, anything, that you've got multiple trades involved and you want to be able to schedule all of them. And the difficult thing with a railroad crossing in planning a project like building a network is that their approval times can be unknown. And so it does make it difficult to manage the overall project. And of course, as Robert mentioned, some are better than others in terms of their process.
I think that, I mean, Monica, that point I think is so lost on people who aren't in the business. I'm constantly trying to get folks in cities to better appreciate that an unknown amount of time is far worse than a predictable long period of time. Like if you have a choice between like maybe it'll take 3 days and maybe it'll take a half a year versus it will always take 30 months, like I think you'd rather want that 30 months for the predictability.
Maybe not 30 months, but certainly it predicts.
No, I meant 30 weeks. 30 months would actually be a disaster. Okay. Yeah, no.
But some
Wrong
do take
unit of
that
time.
long. Yeah.
Well, and there's a topic that Chris has really championed here in the Twin Cities, and he's adamantly for this, is we're building a new light rail spur through our build now. And boy, that adds a whole nother level of complexity during the construction. So
it's
Chris,
one of the few things
they only went over budget like $800
million.
Well done.
Billion here,
You
billion
froze-
there.
you froze up a
Billion,
little bit there.
you know, it's all tax money. It doesn't matter how much, you know.
Oh, I'm so angry. I mean, when they were, it was only going to cost a little less than $2 billion to start to connect a wealthy suburb to Minneapolis by bypassing all of the population density of Minneapolis. You know, which is if you're building a rail line, you really want to avoid population density because that would be a problem. And the amount of money they're spending on it could have solved, you know, like broadband in the metro, basically. I mean, Travis, if they gave you $2 billion to connect the 494, 694 circle, I'm guessing that would be enough for you to just mow right on through it.
Yeah, but if I could charge all kinds of overruns, it'd be like $4 billion, right?
So talking about boondoggles and talking about construction, so railroad crossings aren't really that big a deal for us. How do you guys deal with crossing interstates and crossing rivers between states? We found that those are much more difficult.
Specifically, Monica and Travis, have you crossed the Schuylkill?
No, and we haven't gone across state lines yet, so I can't comment on that.
Okay.
Yeah, interstate's actually fairly easy. We've crossed at least 6 times a year. That we find actually relatively easy. The getting across like the Mississippi River, that was an act of Congress to have that happen. So then we cheated. We attached to the bridges. That was really easy. I actually found it very impressive here, at least up in Minnesota, that when a lot of these bridges were built, there was conduit ducts put in place for first come, first serve. So if there's an open duct, you can just effectively use it and populate it.
Wow.
Yeah, but actually getting under the, oh man, you know, but it's probably very similar to what you said about the rail. It's probably the first time's the worst, and then once you know the process and timing to it, maybe number 2 isn't quite as bad.
I feel like interstates might be different in Jersey, though.
Yeah, maybe.
So 80's like 8 lanes wide, 10 lanes wide, and it's a long and I don't know how it is in your states, but the interstate highways in New Jersey anyway are actually maintained by the State Department of Transportation, which is wonderful to work with. I have to say our NJDOT is just phenomenal. They're really easy. The permitting process is simple. Working with them is wonderful. Which, you know, you don't hear that about too many government agencies, but they've been wonderful to work with. It's just the time, if you're doing something like crossing an interstate, it's like a year-long permitting process. So sometimes we don't know.
But why is it? So, I mean, what's even if it's not a justification, like, is the issue just that they need to make sure they know right where you are because they might be like totally rebuilding it at some point? Like, why would it take that? Why would it be that hard to cross an interstate?
I think it's just that it takes them a long time to approve your plans, and you have to have, like, if we just want to attach to a bridge or just attach to a tunnel, they're just like, just build it, just do it. No big deal at all. We just follow what's already existing and it's not a problem. But when we're crossing perpendicular, if there's already a conduit bank there and the power company owns it or the phone company, then we can use it. And that's very simple. Obviously we have to license it, but that's a fairly simple thing. But you have places where like Route 80 might go through a town and you want to get them both sides of the town connected in a bunch of different places. And so you wind up building a network infrastructure that's less optimal because there's only one crossing that's actually available to you.
So let's talk about the issue that I feel like is I was most excited about when I was pitching both of you and asking you to join the show, which is Monica, you just announced a whole new project. You're rapidly building in a number of different areas. And Robert, I think, did you say you just added 3 new crews? What was the
Yes, today I bought another placer truck. We have 5 more that I have to go pick up, and we're adding people as fast as we can find them. We've got like 10 or 12 crews out there building every day. So, and as Travis said, building season, like it's snow on the ground. We don't care. We just keep building. We build, every single day of the year. So
my memories of that part of the country, it's slush on the ground usually.
yes, we don't get 3 feet usually. So,
and Travis, when was the last time you doubled in size in terms of your build?
This will be another double for 2022. The one prior 2016.
Okay, so
6 to 7 kind of tranches to double up.
Okay, so let's start with you, Monica. You're adding a whole new team in Colorado Springs now, and I don't know, maybe that's different because the city's going to do a lot of that work, and you're going to be working with them. But what are your challenges right now as you're increasing in size and trying to ramp up?
Yeah, I mean, just to clarify that, Colorado Springs Utilities will be the one that will be building and owning that infrastructure, and we'll be installing the customers and servicing the customers as their first anchor tenant.
Okay, so let's look at Culver City then. For instance, I mean, Culver City, you're building, right? And trying.
Yeah, we're building in Culver City, and and hopefully more places in California. So we do have, we hired somebody a few months back with a lot of experience with managing inventory and supply chain. And, we have really started to, we already had some very strong existing relationships with vendors of key components. And he has, we are ratcheting up the ante there with strategic relationships with our vendors. And we have also stockpiled quite a bit of inventory to make sure that we're able to build when we need to build, and we have those materials available to us when we need to build. So, I think that's probably the strategy everywhere. I will say that pre-pandemic, we were already contemplating having redundant supply chains in the event that something like this happened. So fortunately for us, we were somewhat prescient in making sure we had redundancy of supply chains and making sure that we had adequate inventory, prior to scaling up. And then the pandemic happened. So we've been somewhat maybe better positioned than some others.
Is there someone on the team that can take credit for that? Where they were like, like 3 months before the news broke in China, they were like, "Hey, you know what? We should be prepared for this." And then 6 months later, everyone's like, "This guy's a genius," or "This woman's a genius."
Well, I will say, we as Ting has grown, as our operation has grown and scaled, we've really brought in the A team. We have a lot of people with, not only incredible experience, but very impressive experience across the country, building, designing, doing procurement for fiber networks. And, I would say that our senior director of design and engineering, Chad Johnson, who had worked with other fiber providers and incumbents, he was the first one that sort of said, hey, you need to have redundant supply chain. So that was pre-pandemic. So that was helpful there. And then we also have a new VP of inventory, that handles all the inventory, Paul Pine. And again, he also worked at one of the prominent other fiber providers. And the two of them have really managed to make sure that we are well positioned to be able to scale and have the inventory on hand that we need.
Now, as a public company, I know that this is public knowledge, but I don't know what it is. How many customers do you have across all the markets?
If you can hold on.
Yeah, sure. I was just curious because I feel like while you're digging that out, because I feel like it's weird because I feel like you're massive in that you're operating in different states and doing this different stuff, but like the actual number of customers you have today, I think is not like out of whack with what Travis has and probably what Robert's anticipating to get to, if I've read everything correctly.
So as of the end of 2021, so December 31st, we had just under 26,000 subscribers.
Yeah, so like that's totally the same ballpark of Travis has more than that, and Robert, I'm guessing you're in that area. Is that right?
Not there yet, but probably by the end of this year, we'll probably be 3/4 of the way there. So.
Yeah. So it's fascinating too. I mean, because like Monica, you seem like you're a much bigger company because you're operating in all these different places, and your addressable market is pretty similar to these guys.
Well, I'll defer to their experiences, but it takes time to build these networks. One of the things is we've evolved towards, we had done aerial in one market, and most of the other markets were traditional boring and trenching. We're now evolving towards micro trenching because it is 4 times faster. There's an urgency to deploy from the demand from communities, and also works for our needs better.
And
so,
you're working in warm places.
And we're working in places where you can microtrench year round, most of them, not all of them. But as a result, it takes time to build these networks. So you're building them, and as you're going, you're acquiring customers. But generally, for a network to get built and then acquire customers, that's and to a real scale, is a few years in most markets. So it's although we're building in lots of markets, I anticipate that we'll see the customer bumps really start to escalate as we finish those markets and move on to others.
Robert, I feel like the way you listed off what you're doing, it seems like I would guess maybe if you go back to talk about the supply chain 3 months ago, you might have been thinking it's harder than it's been. But is that true? What's it like as you're expanding?
Well, over the past 2 years, we've basically become a manufacturer. Most of the equipment that we use is stuff that we have contract manufacturers for, that we build ourselves. So like all of our taps, all of our drop cables, all of our connectors we use, all that stuff we actually have manufactured to our specifications, and I design most of it. So we're not buying anything from like Corning or CommScope or anything anymore. We're just building with our own stuff, and it's been working great, and we don't have any supply chain issues at all at this point. So, and we're also our backbone fiber stuff, we have got on a schedule. So we have I've put POs for next year, next spring, we have deliveries coming. So that stuff is all allocated already planned in production cycles for the manufacturers, and we're getting that stuff on a steady cadence. Like every 30 to 60 days, we're getting a container with like 40-foot container filled with fiber. So come to our door. So.
But with talking about the labor, are you facing constraints there?
Labor wise, yeah, absolutely. We can't find anybody to work, and we're our basic, lowest paid people who are just starting with no experience are making $15-16 an hour with full benefits, health, dental, life, and medical, prescription, 401k, with 4% match and everything, and you can't even get people to show up for interviews. So it's pretty crazy, and our existing people are working hard and doing a great job, but the labor shortage is real everywhere. So
let me hand it off to Travis then. I feel like whether we pursue the labor issue or the fact that you manufacture all your own stuff, I feel like Travis is better equipped to ask questions about that.
Well, I think what the moral of the story of what you're learning is everybody's way out ahead of the issue. You start getting orders in for 23. As I've told you, Chris, prior, we're already getting orders in for 24, buying chipsets ahead of time, and not in
order some Kiefer Sutherlands.
Well, yeah, you have to, you just got to be. The other thing is interesting is, and I think this is
sorry that just totally failed. It was like the worst bomb of a joke ever. He was the star of the show 24. So I'm just gonna, you can all laugh at me. Edit that out, Henry.
So
ahead, Travis.
The key thing I think the key thing to understand here too that I'm learning about the vendor industry is whoever has good money is going to get product. So if you're aging your vendors out 90, 120 days, or you're waiting for grant dollars to come in before you pay vendors, you need to redo your financial model. So I've got a new deal. Every vendor is paid within 30 days now, and it's really starting to open up inventory for us, because basically what they're saying we've got X hundreds of thousands of feet of conduit. All right, Robert, Monica, Travis, you guys are all paying your bills. Here's your semi-loads. Chris, you don't pay your bills, you don't get anything. So that's the reality. But the electronics, optics, and all that stuff, overbuy, I would say right now. And also make sure your network can adapt, because these manufacturers are only doing certain chipsets now. So you may not be able to have the same SKU forever. You may have to adapt on the fly because there's a new SKU that's available than you need to work in putting it into your network.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to be an interesting. There's no doubt about it.
Monica, when you're trying to figure out your ordering, I mean, you don't even know necessarily which markets are going to come through as you're negotiating with different folks on different partnerships and things like that. Does that make it more difficult, or is it just a matter of you have a sense of how much you're likely to be building in the next year, 2 years, 3 years?
Yeah, we have I would say it's a pretty comprehensive process around determining timing and probability of markets. We have a very, very in-depth, we're Tucows is a publicly traded company. So we have a pretty in-depth budgeting process where we go through all of that, and we break it down by what we're likely to be building by quarter. And that really helps drive our inventory. Now, I will say when we're negotiating with cities, that's obviously a process when we're working with cities and making sure that we both of us want each other as partners. That we don't always make the announcement. Like the announcement we make when it's a public announcement, because again, we're publicly traded. It's when it's finalized. We try to start building as quickly as possible after that announcement. So there's not a huge time lag. And I think in early days we operated a little bit differently, but now we make the announcement and we file the permit the next week. So it's everything is happening in very close succession. So that makes the future planning easier.
So hey, Jim wanted to know, Robert, are you building your own ONTs?
We are not yet, but we are exploring that possibility.
Okay. Are you guys both rolling out GPON networks, or are you rolling out active networks?
So everything that we're doing from a consumer level is, and small business, is all GPON with a 1-32 split. Okay. And then everything that we do kind of on the higher end carrier, like we do backhaul for a lot of big networks, and we do wholesale services and stuff. So that stuff's all point to point or dark fiber, depending on what the client wants.
Are you evolving into XGS-PON now? Is that your next step?
Yeah, so we built our whole network to work with XGS-PON, and we're not doing an overlay, but all of our new POPs that we're building are all XGS-PON. And then we'll come back and do an overlay over some of the existing ones when the demand gets there.
Did you increase the splits? Did you increase the split size then, or are you still at 32?
We're still doing 1-32, and the reason for that is the economics work both ways. And so we think that there's kind of more future overhead. We're also a member, I don't know if it's official yet, but of the 25 gig SGS or 25 gig PON consortium. So we're kind of planning on that being the next step after XGS PON. So
gotcha.
Monica, you were going to say something?
Monica, what do you guys?
That's what we were doing. I'm not a network engineer, so I don't want to make a lot of comments at a turn, but definitely we're building XGS PON.
Okay, yeah. Big swing in the industry heading that direction. Well, which I think is actually smart from even from a procurement standpoint. Is there'll be a fair amount of XGS equipment out in the field here, or in the market, I should say.
And the pricing is getting to where it doesn't make much of a difference on the OLT side, on the customer side. We're seeing like $80 to $120 depending on what the equipment is. So,
gotcha. Yep.
So I was wanting to go back for a sec to see if I track that a little bit. In switching from in GPON, you typically have a 1-32 split. You're splitting, one fiber 32 ways, and you share all the bandwidth. With XGS PON, you could actually do like a 1-28. Is that right? And then 1-128, and then you can still deliver a lot of capacity that way, but you don't want to change that split down.
So
what I'm guessing.
Looking at it from the future standpoint, that right now we have so much bandwidth, because if people are getting 1 gig service and you're oversubscribing, so regular GPON, for anyone who doesn't know, it's 2.5 gigs down and 1.25 gigs up. And then so you're splitting that. If you're selling gigabit service, you're oversubscribing 32 times. If you have 1-32 split, if you have a 1-64, it's 64x or whatever. So, I mean, it's not quite, because you have 2.5 gigs. So let's say one person can get full gig while the other people are sharing the 1.5 gig or whatever down. But I think that if you say, okay, well, now that's what we're selling today. We're selling 500 meg service and 300 meg service or whatever, and gigabit service. With XGS PON, we have 10 gigs up and 10 gigs down. We have so much extra overhead. let's switch it to 1 to 64 or 128. I don't have a problem doing that at the CO side, but I don't want to do that out in the field, because in the future, as bandwidth requirements change, people want things in 3D. Who knows what other applications come up in the future with virtual reality stuff or whatever, where you need a lot more bandwidth. And we're going to have the same issue they have now, because 10 years ago, a gigabit was just a massive amount of bandwidth, and now we're saying, hey, that's not really enough. So
right, you don't want to send someone out to the neighborhood to have to touch everyone's home ultimately. That's the disaster, right?
Yeah, exactly. So.
Okay, so one other quick question, which was building your own ONTs. How exactly does that work, in the sense that, like, one of the things that I've always been perplexed by is that, like, GPON is a standard, except for the fact that, like, Adtran and Calix and Nokia don't, like, interact, so it's like not a standard. But, like, can you just, if you're an Adtran platform, can you just build your own ONTs and start throwing them out there? How does that work?
So I don't know if you want to take that, Travis, or you want me to take that, or
Well, I'll give you go ahead, and then I'll give you my impression on that.
So I've those three vendors you talked about. So Nokia is open; they'll work with anyone. Doesn't matter what they have their own equipment, but they're standards based. They'll work with anybody. Adtran is the same. Calix is very proprietary, and they want you to use everything Calix. So with Nokia or whatever, they're open, and you can pretty much use any standards based chipset, and it should work. So I mean, I haven't used everything out there, but our interoperability testing and stuff that we've done. Most of the 10 gig stuff is a lot more compatible than the standard GPON stuff.
Yeah, but XGS-PON is, from my understanding, is substantially more open. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And that was one of the real drivers of XGS. Now, we cheated and we went active Ethernet, so Ethernet works with everybody. So we use whatever we plug in, it works. But as far as, we have some pockets in the metro area here where we're a little fiber light. So believe it or not, Chris, we're going to try our first XGS-PON deployment this summer. I'm gonna see how it goes.
So are you really going to do it, or is this going to be like a Terragraph thing? Did you ever pop Terragraph up somewhere?
No, never put Terragraph up. Never put in, what's that other one that everyone's talking about now? Tarvana or something? Carvana?
Tirana, I think. Tirana.
Yeah. No, never.
I used to live in Tirana.
Say that again, Monica?
I used to live in Tirana.
Tirana, yeah. But we'll see. I think XGS actually has some traction. It's 10 by 10, I believe. So I think it'll be interesting to see. But I think I'm with Robert. We're going to do a 32-way split, see how it goes.
Well, so my understanding, I mean, my mentor and a lot of the tech stuff is a guy who was super into the PON work. And his argument had always been that PON is going to win because you have AT&T, Verizon, and others who are using it. And so the cost is always going to be really low, because even if it's technically not as good, it's going to be tons of money for development, and it's going to be cheap equipment because it's moving in such large bulk. So I decided to throw that out there.
I would argue, in Travis's case, if he's able to put fiber in the ground at a reasonable rate, you're never going to beat an $11 SFP for 10 gig. I mean, no matter what the ONT you're using is, it's going to be more than the optics. So, and you can get a media converter for $10. So, like, you're talking about $20 for the CPE if you're doing active Ethernet. And you can use literally, at least, it's anyone's. So the reason we do it is because we're doing a lot of rural areas where I use 12 count drop cable to go 4 miles down a road, and I can split that and serve 10 different neighborhoods with that. And it reduces our build costs significantly, and we're still giving people great service. One of the, I think Jim Troutman, commented and said he's doing 164, and we'll probably do the same thing. We actually have some rack mount little boxes that we made that are 1x2 and 1x4 splitters that we use in the CO that we'll probably use in the beginning, but we'll still build everything out in the field as a 1x32. We'll have a 1x4 splitter out in the splice case somewhere, and that feeds a bunch of trunks that are feeding 8-port tap cases, because that way in the future we move a patch cable, and now we have 1x32 at the equipment end. So that makes a lot of sense, especially as the OLT ports are very expensive still. So
relatively. I would agree in your rural application that your PON strategies, we're right in the metro area, so density is But I'll give you one negative on Active E is when somebody gets into one of your high count backbone cables, oof, it takes a while to splice 3,456 fibers back together.
That's for sure.
So you got to be so your due diligence on underground and marking and watchdogs has to be spot on. But I'll tell you what, you're right, Robert. As far as when you're open like that, optics are cheap, networks are cheap, Ethernet is so well proven, and it's super easy to debug and troubleshoot. So that's why we went that way.
And the reason
one customer. So like if we have a problem with a splitter somewhere or a case or something, you do something, you're troubleshooting because your light levels aren't right, you're affecting 32 customers.
Yeah, exactly.
Customer.
Yeah. But I'll just say that, like, Robert, you'd mentioned your customer satisfaction rating, and Travis mentioned his, or has mentioned his in the past. And like, when people get into this too much, I'm just sort of like, it looks to me like you could build a really good network either way. So I feel like the holy war is a little bit overblown.
Oh yeah. We're kind of splitting hairs here. It's kind of, but I would metro areas where underground construction is incredibly expensive. I like to put in more conduit and more fiber. You've never heard anyone ever complain about having too much fiber in the ground.
Mm-hmm. So I think we scared away the non-technical people. We can get back to business model issues, which I'm a little bit stronger at. Monica, can you give us a sense of how the Colorado Springs partnership's working? Because it looks really cool.
Sure. I would say it's more of an agreement, and it is just that we are the first anchor tenant on the network that Colorado Springs Utilities is building to every premise in the city. And I think you may have asked me about there are other providers that have done very limited fiber builds or have spoken about doing limited fiber builds in the city, but this is to the entire footprint of Colorado Springs, which is quite a significant community, significantly sized community in that region of Colorado. And so the city will be building the network over the next approximately 6 years. They're likely starting in Q4 of this year. And we will be, not unlike Westminster, we will then be lighting the network and installing and provisioning and servicing customers and
now,
marketing customers.
You did say to every premises. So Westminster is interesting in that the city owns the drop fiber or the drop cable and the fiber, I think. And then you own the ONT, right?
Yes.
Is that going to be the same thing in Colorado Springs then?
I believe it's the same thing in Colorado Springs, but don't quote me on that.
Okay, because it's the team was it the broadband group is working with Colorado Springs. I think also did the Huntsville and the Springfield, Missouri models, where in those cases the ISP owned the drop cable, which cuts costs for the city, but then I think really limits competition. If you're just getting already on the side of the house, then I think you may face more competition than CenturyLink or Google will in those respective cities.
Yeah, it's definitely in terms of how we operate, how we interact with Colorado Springs Utilities, it more resembles the Huntsville model than the Westminster model.
Okay. The excitement, I think, is just that Colorado Springs has long struck me as like a very attractive city. I figured someone was going to be really doing good work there. A municipal utility, it's a wealthy city, 130,000 people, 150,000 people, something like that, well educated. It's kind of like Huntsville. Looks like a great city to be a fiber provider.
Yes.
Let me just ask then one other question of you, Monica, which is like, what are the general lessons you've learned in terms of partnerships? Because I feel like, you bought a company, you built a network, and then you partnered. And I feel like the next several things we saw, it was kind of not partnerships. I felt like, reading between the lines, like I think everyone thinks Westminster is a success, but nonetheless, like maybe it was more work than building it yourself. What have you learned over the years?
So, I would say overall, we have a preference for building, operating, and providing service over networks that we own. And there are a lot of, sort of micro reasons for that. One is, and we've seen this happen in other places, is and not what, but to be clear, not Westminster, but sometimes when it's a private partnership and a network is built and the city isn't treated well, or the residents aren't treated well, city isn't treated well in the negotiation, or residents aren't treated well during the build, which is another entity, not Ting, then we follow on, and we want to have a productive working relationship with the city, and we want the residents to subscribe. It creates additional challenges for us, and so that's just one of a few reasons why we now have a preference for building, operating, and providing service over networks that we own. It's not to say that we won't look at partnerships, just that the terms would have to be very compelling for us to move forward. And when you're partnering with a utility or with a city, that they care about their reputation there, and they care about how residents are treated during the build. So that's not really a consideration there. Additionally, when you build a network that you're going to operate over, you're building it with the specs that are going to be most efficient for you to operate. So there's that additional, I would say, benefit. Now, the reason that we have always said that we would look at partnerships is because we really want as many Americans to get access to fiber internet as possible, and we can't scale our own construction operation to do that for as many people as we can if we partner in some cases, or someone else is taking care of the construction piece. So it's really about getting more better fiber internet to more people in the same time frame as it would for us to build. But that being said, we're dramatically scaling up our building capacity, and we will be building a lot more of our own networks in the years to come.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I want to come back to is how you do such great customer service, because you do. I've interacted with it on multiple occasions, both through Hover and through Ting Mobile. So, if you can beat Travis to building fiber to my house, I'd love to pilot, that service here in St. Paul for fiber. Robert, now when you and I talked, one of the things that you were excited about on the panel in New Jersey was you were very much open to the idea of partnerships, but I don't think you've done many yet. Is that right?
So we in our state, there really aren't too many municipal utilities. There are two that I know of. One's in Vineland, New Jersey. The other one's in Butler. And we actually have a great relationship with the people in Butler, and we're working on a partnership with them. So it's an electric utility that the city owns, and we're going to be putting fiber throughout the town. We're basically going to build it. It's, and we have a great relationship with them, like I said. So if there's any make ready to be done or whatever, it'll be a pretty simple process. But most of what we build is aerial. We actually just bought a directional drill and a plow and some boring equipment and everything this past month. So as soon as the snow gets off the ground, then we're going to start doing some underground construction. But most of the other areas around here, there's an electrical co-op that we have a great relationship with. They don't really have any interest in building anything. And we, so far, with all the money that all the different towns and cities and counties have gotten, we have gotten literally a single penny from any of them, although they all talk about that they want to spend money on broadband. But I find one thing that's really crazy to me, and I don't know if you guys find this, is different towns in the exact same geographic area. One of them be very hostile to us and not want us to come in, like, oh, we already have 5G, we don't need you. Or we already have cable, we don't need you. And then the other ones are literally begging us and saying, what can we do? We'll do anything we can to help make it easier for you to come into our town. And the two towns are literally right next to each other with the same demographics, same problems from a connectivity standpoint. So, but kind of a roundabout answer. But we're planning on doing our first one this spring with the Butler Power Company.
Yeah, when you mentioned that a lot of the towns want to put money into it, but they don't get around to it necessarily, it just reminds me that I want to have a healthier diet. I really do. Like, I think about it a lot. It's just, at any given moment, it doesn't seem like the best use of my time. It's really hard. And Travis, I'm just curious if you want to reflect on any of that as you've thought about partnerships. We've talked about it over the years.
Yeah, the model that I liked was the conduit model. We've used some conduit that cities have put in the ground. But other than that, I tend to like to control the end-to-end experience. And so if we utilize somebody else's fiber, the goal would be to overbuild it within a few years and move those customers over to our own network. But I do find what Robert said interesting, because there's all these, apparently all these mythical government dollars floating around. And I have a sense that the individuals on this call, including myself, will see very, very, very zero of it. So
I don't know. I mean, I'd be curious. I mean, this is one of the things that I think where Monica, where you being in so many different places, it wouldn't surprise me if in Virginia, some of the places around Charlottesville are giving you a call to figure out what it would take to get you to expand. There's areas where I could imagine, you're it's up to you whether or not you'd get some of that money.
Yeah, I mean, what I say, Charlottesville's a really interesting city in that the city itself, there's a core that's the city, but then there are people outside of the city limits that also have Charlottesville as their mailing address, but are technically in the county. So there are a lot of people that we can still expand to that are, in call it the Charlottesville greater regional area. In terms of other cities that might be, half an hour to 45 minutes away, most of them are already covered. Like Richmond is covered by Verizon Fios, et cetera. Most of them are already covered either by an incumbent. It could be an ILEC, a CLEC, or we're also seeing some of the regional electric co-ops that are covering the more rural areas.
Sure. I guess one second, Robert. What I'm thinking of is more like we just did an interview this week on Community Broadband Bits with Monmouth Independence Networks, which had worked with actually Doug Dawson, and they expanded to another town. And it's one of those things where the business model works better to serve areas with density. And but the county came to them and said, "Well, we've got this, these ARPA dollars, the rescue plan dollars. Would you expand to these low density, unincorporated areas with this money?" And Reedsburg, Wisconsin's been wonderful at that. Cedar Falls has from the municipal fiber providers. So that's where I feel like an opportunity might be. Travis, like where you are in Wisconsin, you can imagine a county saying, "Well, you've done a really good job here. Could you go into these lower density areas if we just give you this money?"
Yeah, and we're certainly going to look at when the rules come out, for the new infrastructure bill, what that looks like.
Mm-hmm.
We did look at a couple of places to do the last round of funding that initially they said customers had to be lit by the end of December, and that just wasn't possible. So we sort of opted out of that. But we'll certainly be watching when the rules come out for the new infrastructure bill funding for broadband to see if there are any opportunities there.
Robert, I steamrolled you. What were you going to say?
No, I apologize. One of the things I was in so with these 565 different municipalities, we have to ask for right-of-way access in every single one of them. So we've been for 2 years, we just go 3 years now, just going through the entire state. So we were at one of the meetings recently, and I'm not going to say which town it was, but the item on the agenda beforehand was giving broadband money to Comcast was the topic of the item. And they basically said, oh yeah, well, we've been given this money from the government and we have to give it to Comcast. And they said, okay, well, do you guys just want to vote to just go ahead and do that? And then the attorney said, I think we have to do a resolution that you guys authorized to give the money to Comcast. And everyone said, okay, I'm in favor of that. So go ahead and prepare that for the next meeting. And the first thing I said when I came on, and as I said, well, it doesn't have to be for Comcast, and you should probably have an RFP and have some particular objective in mind. And if you're not going to do that, you should at least burn the money so you get some warmth from it. And
yeah, I've been interacting with a county, and we came in and we're sort of like getting our bearings, and all of a sudden we saw there's a resolution to ask to spend some money on a connection with AT&T to build out to 90% of the population. And like the first thought we had was, okay, like this money is like, it's one-time money to try to connect everyone. Who's going to do the last 10% if you're going to give this to a company that already doesn't do a great job to only do 90%? Maybe. And like, I think we all know that 90% to AT&T, they use different calculators than the rest of us do in a lot of cases.
Very true.
Joshua posted an interesting comment here. My biggest problem is trying to get enough people interested in fiber.
Yeah, we still. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if, you know, Monica, Robert, you probably run into people who, in towns, you know, people in authority and otherwise who are just like, oh no, like I heard that's not even needed anymore. You know, like, you know, we've got. I just saw today a prominent person who's well educated in like how the movie industry works, like a very technical person on video cameras and making movies, was like, Starlink's changing everything. And I was like, Starlink has 145,000 customers in the entire world, and next year they're not going to have very much more than that. Like, they're not changing everything. What are you talking about? Like more people have rural fiber, like, you know, like in a given month than Starlink's connected people. I don't know, but anyway, so yeah.
I'm not getting.
Let's talk about ignorant comments.
I'm not hearing about Starlink from anyone, but I will say, except for people that I know who live in rural areas who've said it is much better than the former satellite internet options. But
that was before HughesNet raised their bandwidth caps.
Now they're going to be competitive.
Just Monica knows.
Yeah, I no longer HughesNet customer, so it doesn't matter. But yeah, I don't hear about Starlink. I think what I do think we still need to do, though, is make sure all municipalities and the staffers and elected officials understand the difference fiber can make to their community. That's still something that, that I work on educating. I still get people who, they think wireless is going to do that. And they think, they just have to sort of deal with and live with the teleco and cable options that they have.
Mm-hmm.
The biggest thing that we run into is one of the things is people say, oh, well, 5G makes fiber obsolete. And I said, well, whatever wireless it is, it's always a generation behind. I said, so 5G is going to give you gigabit connectivity. We're giving you 10 gigabit connectivity at minimum. And, by the time they actually roll that out, we'll be higher than that. And I said, so whatever the current fiber is, wireless is always at least a tenth of that or slower. And I said, the other thing is, a lot of times will say, well, but you offer TV. What is it that you do exactly? And so they don't really understand. It's just completely beyond the scope of most people's thinking that there's another option other than cable and telephone. So the fact, okay, well, what are you doing? You're doing that for businesses? No, we're doing it for everyone. Everyone in the entire footprint that we deploy in, we can provide service for, and they don't need the cable company or the phone company anymore. And people wrapping their heads around that is difficult sometimes. And so you have to explain it like 4 or 5 different times in different ways. So
I absolutely agree on that. I also, Monica, do you have a meeting 3 minutes ago?
Oh, yes. Well, it's starting at 3:15. Okay.
So we are going to be wrapping up, but I did want to bring in one last thing that you do. And I just wanted to get a sense of how Robert and Travis react, which is, I don't know, it was about a year ago, I feel like, maybe roughly, where if you interact with your customer service through Two Cows, any related companies, you talk to a person and they first sort of like, what's your problem? And then you explain it. And like you said, they understand it. These are educated tech people who are empowered to make decisions. And rather than complicated ways of trying to figure out if they're able to access your records, you have a system now that pretty effortlessly allows them to get my permission to unlock the record for some period of time where they can have access to my account. I assume that's for some sort of like account safety kind of thing, but to me it seemed really elegant and nice and comforting. And I don't know if you want to say a word about that, if you're familiar with it, because maybe I use more Ting products than you do.
Unfortunately, I've never lived in a Ting market. I certainly had have a Ting cell phone in the US, but I think I would just say from a broader perspective for Two Cows, we have, I think we have fairly tirelessly in starting with the domain space, because that's where this was, that's where these issues initially came up. But certainly across our company, everything that we do, 2 things that are really important: consumer privacy and net neutrality. So I'd say, that being elegant and being only for a limited time, that really is about our dedication to consumer privacy. And we do have these, great tools that help people sort of control their experience as much as they can. That's one of the things that we noted when we launched the cell phone company, is people wanted to better control, their usage, have better visibility into what they were using, better control over, other people on their plan, et cetera, things like that. So that's having a software, having the capability to do the software development work that we do enables us to customize our platform more nimbly and better for what people are looking for. So I know that's not specifically about that feature, but I would say that is reflective of our general attitude towards, respecting consumer privacy is really important, we believe, and net neutrality is a different issue, but also that we can develop features that help people feel more secure and more in control of their experience.
Yeah, our community broadband bits show next week is actually with the folks from Monmouth and Independence, or one of the people. And at the end of the show, we talk about the OSS and how they custom wrote it that they use. And it's I think it's kind of interesting. And I just wanted to throw this at Travis and Robert to get a sense of, whether you use any special tools to ensure customer privacy, or how you think about that.
Travis, I don't know if you want to go first or.
Oh, no. Yeah, go ahead.
So everything that we use is custom, and that has been a key differentiator for us for 20 plus years, is having our own software and being able to control the experience. If we need a tool, we build it. And if our customer has a good suggestion, we say, that's a great idea, and we build it. Because all the stuff that's off the shelf, and I apologize if any of you had any part in any of the off the shelf stuff, is all garbage as far as I'm concerned. So we haven't seen any good commercial software for companies like ours.
Yeah, I guess I would echo that sentiment, is control your own destiny. I guess it's one of the reasons we never got trapped in somebody else's ecosystem, is didn't want to be trapped into what they had. So in order to provide maximum flexibility, and honestly, certain things that I just take for granted, when I talk to some other operators, they're like, wow, really? You can do that? You just onboarding customers like we do. The theory I always had is you should have your internet live within 5 minutes or less, from the time you decide to have it, to decide to buy it, and not make it difficult for people. So it's the mantra we try to use: be the customer, and the tools that we build would be tools that you would want to use if you were buying service from us.
Excellent. Well, I really appreciate everyone jumping on today. It's been I think a good in-depth conversation, like the kind that we like to have at Connect This. So
can we do one last compliment to Hotel Wi-Fi / dual LTE Wi-Fi on the road here? It survived the 1 hour and 7 minutes. Monica's
Wi-Fi definitely wins. Travis, yours certainly did better than it when you were in Michigan.
Oh, yeah. Anyone who's okay, I just got to use this every time. 14G is what I think is going to actually be the wireless technology that wins. But until we get there, fiber for everyone.
I'm waiting for quantum entanglement, and that's going to be our upgrade after that. So,
ooh, maybe I'll steal that. That's better than mine. So, all right.
Do you remember what you stole from Milo, or did you already forget that?
I'm 52 now. I can't hardly remember anything, so I got to start writing this stuff down.
Well, I want to thank everyone. Next week, we are going to have a return to the regular Doofus squad. Me, King Doofus, with Travis, Kim, and Doug. And, we don't know what we're going to talk about because the news hasn't happened yet, but it's going to be interesting. And
more government-free money, I bet.
Oh, I'm sure that will come up.
Coming to you.
Plans are coming to you. and I'm going to figure out when I lost the bet to Travis, because I don't think it's yet, but it's coming up soon. So,
hey, can we talk about the topic Joshua brought up? I thought that was interesting. Why do you have to talk people into fiber instead of just start building it? It's amazing.
Yeah, we can talk more about it. We did talk about it a little bit, but yeah.
Okay, that'd be a good topic, because I think people misunderstand. You don't need to ask permission.
As Robert mentioned, in some places you do.
Permit? No. Well, I bet Robert could find a little pocket where he doesn't need to cross anything too hard. So, but all right, another day, another topic.
All right, thank you, Robert. Thank you, Monica. Travis, it's been wonderful as always. And that's it for Connect this.